4 years ago, this just didn't exist. It was rolling Wiltshire countryside. These days, The Beeches is a state-of-the-art training centre with Australian Jeremy Gask at the helm. Jeremy's convinced he's got a strong team for the year ahead, including a real star horse that he's hoping will take him back home for a crack at the Melbourne Cup. The Beeches is the dream turned reality for Eamon Wilmot, who now works in tandem with high-profile owner Tony Bloom and Gask in what at first seems an unlikely team from the worlds of IT, gambling and sport. Wilmot explains how the team was formed.
And Jeremy Gask wrote from Australia. And even I always remember reading the email for the first time, you could sense this guy was top class. Obviously his background, a lot of people in the UK wouldn't know he'd already trained 200 plus winners and being top of his game in Australia. But his understanding of science, his understanding of nutrition was one where we just thought you set him apart. Of course, that was all by email and telephone.
I just happened to be sitting down one night and someone alerted me to a job that was being offered over here. And Eamon had put an advert in the Racing Post, which I did continue. So I did scan the Racing Post, not necessarily looking for work or anything like that. I just happened to come across it, and I remember asking my wife. I sat there at that stage. Kerry wasn't keen on going anywhere. She liked a trainer's life. She thought, I'm quite enjoying the quiet time and you being home at a regular hour and so forth. But she said, give him a call or at least put something on paper, which I did. Sent it over. I think the next morning, Eamon contacted me and asked would I be interested in coming over and having a chat with him and seeing. That's where it stemmed from. So we flew over, had a look, and I think the vision that he had, and it's nothing which we see now. Back then, it was it's certainly come on in leaps and bounds, and to be to be involved in the development, and obviously Tony coming in and helping develop the place was a major factor, and knowing that the vision that they had and what was the hopes of the horses that they were hopefully going to be able to train and the facilities, it really didn't take as long as what some people would think to cross the world and take something up like this.
We started off quite small and we've developed a lot of things here, and now we've got facilities which all our owners are really happy with. It's a great facility, and with Jeremy here doing really well from last season and carrying on this season, we're very hopeful. Yeah.
What motivates you, Tony? Because I know you love all your sports. You're, of course, chairman down at Brighton as well, the football club really going places. You must love change and success in equal measure.
I certainly enjoy success, whatever I do, whether it's business, sport, Brighton, playing poker or just playing cards with friends. I always like to win, and certainly I think we've got a winner here at these facilities, and it's really relaxing being here. It's very relaxing for the horses, and we're looking ahead for lots of winners. It's
an interesting one really meeting Tony, because in the previous life to this I was involved in a web company, and that web company went public for a couple of billion or whatever it was out on NASDAQ in '99, and at that stage we had to go and meet the masters of the universe, all these guys from Solomon Smith Barney and all the major bankers out there, and these guys are all supposed to have $7 million a year basic plus. And it's quite interesting to meet those people because they are quite impressive. But I do remember, and I've told a few people this, the first time we met with Tony Bloom, and the guy's power and his ability to take in detail, I'd never met anybody like him. So having him as part of the team here and having him as sort of supporting the vision is a tremendous thing for us, and we're really very grateful for that.
We saw Shawadi work for the first time here in front of our cameras. Now, he's owned by Tony Bloom, isn't he? And he could be the horse at the centre of a really romantic tale for you personally, because I think you've got the Melbourne Cup as a long time issue with him.
Yeah, that's right. I think Tony himself has a big ambition to have a runner in the Melbourne Cup, and Tony by nature isn't someone who just wants to compete. He likes to win or compete very well at whatever he does, and he set out to try and find some horses that perhaps we could get qualified and compete in Melbourne, and it'd be a dream for me. I came very close to having a couple of runners. Those that have been to a Melbourne Cup understand what I'm talking about, that it's a day that is incredible. You know, I've been to several and won races on Melbourne Cup Day, and that in itself is a great buzz. But to have to come to England to get a Melbourne Cup runner is probably a more unorthodox way of doing it. But looking forward to seeing if he can come through. He's got to find a little bit more to get into the race. But I think that's the sort of horse you need, one that's on the rise rather than one's there. He's probably got to lift his rating, I would think 4 or 5, maybe 6 pounds you'll never guarantee getting in there. I think the cup's getting stronger. But he looks like he'll stay. He hasn't tried any good ground, good defend, but I think the general consensus is that he would benefit by good ground, which is something you do need to go to Melbourne. So there's a lot of boxes that I think you have to tick to try and get the right horse over there. You know, I admire what Dermot Weld's done, and Luca Kamani and Godolphin have done a terrific job. Last year I thought was a great effort, but to travel the horses over there and find the right horse to run over there is, you know, I would have to say that you do watch what they're doing, and you've definitely got to take some points from those guys that have successfully done it, or in Luca's case, all but done it. They've obviously got the right recipe and know what they're looking for, and have got the method for it. So there's a lot of things you've got to look into, and perhaps you've got to try more than one. To think that we're definitely going to go in with one horse and get a run is we're hopeful of that. But I wouldn't say that we would be only aiming at the one horse to go. We'd try and, you know, the aim would be to try and have a couple that might sneak in there.
Mm-hmm. And would you have any? I know it's early days yet. Would you have any firm plan yet as to when we might see him make his debut for your stable?
We haven't really sat down. He's only been here for a week. We'll sit down over the next few days actually and map out a plan. We wanted to see how he settled in and how soon. He was due to race fairly soon in France. In fact, next week I think he was due to race. So he is nice and forward, but coming over here in a new environment, I think we've got to probably spend a few days just having a look at him, learning a bit about him. It takes a while to learn about those horses. It's not a matter of just coming in and training them the way you would think. They take a bit of learning. He's been in quarantine. We've had those sorts of things to think about. So we would probably sit down and work that out over the next week or two. He's settled in very, very well. The first couple of days we had to find a mate for him and just settle in, and he just came out and had a walk and a trot out in the bowl and had a canter up the hill, and he had a good look around. And today was his first piece of work. Albeit it wasn't hard work, but it was nice to see him stretch his legs, and I thought he moved well. He had a bit of a look at us as we came past, and more than happy with the way that he's settling in now. He's eating well, which is important, because, you know, naturally there'd be a slight change in that routine and in what he's being fed, and so it's something that we would try and do gradually. We wouldn't rush him into anything just yet.
And you mentioned that he might go to Australia, all being well, with some company. Any thoughts as to who might be aimed there as well? We
haven't at the moment. I think the horse that he worked with this morning, Royal Riviera, is a horse that Tony also has got. He's won a bumper impressively, but I do like the way he moves, and I'm quietly excited about him. I'm not saying that he's going to measure up to be a Cups horse at all, but he'll stay, and he looks to me to be quite a nice horse. So you just never know what's going to bob up and what's going to come through the ranks. Tony would also, you know, he'll probably stay on the lookout for horses as well. If things come around that he thinks might fit the bill, I'm sure that he would be more than happy to have a look.
Street Power, what a success story he's been for you, Jeremy. He won off 55 last January, and here we are, not 18 months later, 30 odd pounds higher, still winning. Yeah,
he's been a terrific horse. He's been the source of amusement and enjoyment, that horse. You know, early days, Eamon has been in love with that horse for a long time, and his first start as a 2-year-old was quite encouraging, and he just lost his way a little bit as a colt, had his mind on other things. And I remember a day, it was a big day touted on his return as a 3-year-old at Salisbury, and we had a big group there and had a box, and Eamon had all the friends, and he went terrible. He fell out the stalls, and the ground was a bit firm that day for him, and he ran poorly. So we gelded him. He was put away, and he's been a different horse since. It's amazing, since the day he was gelded, it's transformed him. So he's been he's got just a terrific turn of foot, and Steve's got a great relationship with him. And it's exciting watching a horse like him that can sit and sprint off of good speed. And quite excited. I'm surprised actually that he's the sort of profile of a horse which I probably would have sold to overseas back in Australia. But I'm delighted to. We've got some great people in him. You know, he's winning at Ascot, provided a huge thrill for the owners, and a couple of them only bought into him a week before that.
Yeah.
So, so the name of what we've tried to do here is not hang on to those horses ourselves necessarily, but get people involved and get clients in. So it's a great way of trying to progress. Our aim is to build our owner base and build our client base, and he's certainly been a good advertisement for that.
You've got a smashing horse here, Jeremy, called One Way or Another, who had hardened form in Australia. He's followed you over here as well, and by the looks of him, he's settled in really well too.
Yeah, he's been a terrific horse, and it's great to have a horse come from Australia. And you know, I remember the day that there was a couple of them that came over on that trip. Denton was a horse who came over as well, and I think he won 3 in a row for us. He's been off for a year, or off for most of the year, but he'll return soon too. But one way or another, it's good. It gets a bit of interest in Australia too. When those horses were running well, it did create a bit of interest. And he came from Lindsay Park, one of the major stables in Australia, and Paul Cooper, or Coop's my assistant, he worked with One Way or Another in Australia, so he knew him, knew where he came from. And Terry Henderson was who was part owner of Bauer actually. With Terry, he recommended that the horse might be one that we should look at bringing over. Admittedly, we were thinking about coming over. Jumping was what the aim for him was, but he just showed since he's come over. He's settled in very, very well. I think he'd be better this year. I think he's acclimatised better this year. He just failed. His coat didn't quite come last season. He looks a lot better this year.
Yeah, and he ran at Doncaster recently over 6 furlongs. Ran an absolute screamer, didn't he, in third. He looked a strong race. And of course, he got that horrible whack over the head in the closing stages. So he ran really well there.
Yeah, I think you'd have to say he was pretty unlucky that day. Took us by surprise to a certain extent. You know, the 6 we were really using that as a bit of a sharpener for him, and just to see how he was going this year. And he was pretty unlucky, but he's come back in good. We'll keep him fresh I think that's the way he likes to be. He doesn't do a lot of galloping, does a lot of work on the treadmill.
The treadmill is just one aspect of the training regime at the Beeches. The state-of-the-art Sea Walker, designed by Wilmot, is another.
Yeah, I mean, the background on that is that we're actually in the process just about to buy one of the spas, and the spas are very successful. Basically, you've got water at about 2 degrees centigrade with lots of salt in it. I was actually on the phone to buy one, and I thought, you know what, I think we could do better. So we put a lot of work, a lot of R&D in it, and basically it's a walker where the horses walk through freezing cold salt water. So it's just a step in that direction. So since we built this one here, which we built about 4 or 5 years ago, we've actually then gone into business with a chap called Justin Chittenden, who's managing director of the Sea Walker Company, and they've actually made a phenomenal success. They've just put one in at Godolphin in Newmarket. They sold a bunch into Dubai, and they're actually off to Australia next week for a new deal there.
So what are its main benefits?
Its main benefits we use it for here is actually post-work. So as soon as the horse has galloped, we go straight on there and against lower limb covered in freezing cold water, minimise inflammation and really keep the horse sound.
Yeah. And it aids fitness as well, because they, you know, just seeing the horses through it this morning, they have to work quite hard at it, don't they?
They do, and we've actually put heart rate monitors on the horses, and you can actually see it's harder than it looks. I mean, if you ever walked in the sea yourself, it's sort of ankle deep and knee deep, you realise it is quite hard. And it does encourage them to actually move in a very beneficial way. The back legs come out, they're working their back end, so it's got a lot of benefits.
A horse who had a little bit of luck desert her last time was Anne of Kiev. To tell the truth, it was a nightmare run at Windsor. You must have been frustrated by that.
Yeah, I think those things happen in her style of racing. She just galloped past you in the background there, but with her style of racing, she likes to get back, and you've got to ride her for a little bit of luck, and perhaps sometimes trying to make luck gets you into more trouble. But that's her. I think she's very well in at the moment on the turf. She hasn't run much on the turf, but I think clearly that showed that she's more than capable on the turf. And I'm surprised actually at the moment, because she's been for sale in the yard at quite what I think is quite a cheap sort of a price on our. But she'd be a lovely horse for people to get involved and go to the races. She's sound and tough, and looks to handle all going.